Capitol Hoops here today at Walt Whitman High School, continuing our series on coaches beyond the X and O's. Today we're with Whitman head coach Chris Lun. Coach, we appreciate the time.
It's a pleasure to catch up with Capitol Hoops. It's always fun seeing you around the local gyms.
I want to start off by getting a little background on yourself. I know you're from the area, went to a Montgomery County school. If you can just, fill us in on...
Yeah, I grew up in the Gaithersburg, Germantown area. Spent my whole life in Montgomery County. I went out of state to college to Penn State, and I played basketball at one of the Penn State branch campuses, Mont Alto, for 2 years. After I worked in radio and TV for a couple of years before I got into teaching. And coaching is something that I just kind of fell into, and I'm real glad I made that decision.
At what point in your life did you think that coaching could be a career, or at least a part of your career?
Yeah, it wasn't until my first year teaching at Parkland Middle School. One of my buddies was the athletic director, and they needed a middle school coach. And I really didn't have much interest, but I said, if you can't find anybody else, I'll be happy to try it. And we had a pretty good year, and then that next year, one of my buddies was a varsity coach at Seneca Valley. So I took the JV job that opened up at Seneca, and we had a very good year in 03-04. And then the Whitman job opened up, and it was something I just applied for experience. And I'm thankful they gave me the opportunity, and it's worked out real well for me.
How old were you when you got the Whitman job?
When I came to Whitman, it was the summer of 04, so I was 27.
And talk about the process getting the Whitman job. I'm sure there were other people in line to get that. You're a young guy at 27 years old with not a ton of experience. Just expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I took the interview just for the experience, just to say, hey, let me get my name out there and just kind of see the types of questions they ask. And I walked in, and there was about 6 or 7 people in suits, and it was pretty intimidating. But I felt pretty good with it. And when they called me back for my second interview and they offered me the position, I actually still carry a little piece of my wallet of the very first article that came out when I got hired. Our former AD, Mr. McGathan, had a quote that said, we're just hoping that he's our answer. So every time times are kind of tough, I just look back at that. It just kind of gets me that motivation to prove that I was the right person for the job.
And I think you proved that you were the answer pretty quick. Talk about your first year on the job.
The first time I saw Whitman play, I knew they were coming off a 5-win season. So I wasn't expecting much when we walked into back then it was the Band of Brick Summer League at St. Albans, which is a great league. Bob Brown used to run that. Then they switched it to Scholastic Scout. But the first time that I saw my team play, I looked at my JV assistant coach came with me from Seneca, and I looked and I said, there's just no way this team could have been 5-18. They had a lot of good players, a lot of people that played varsity the year before. So I was really excited seeing right away the kind of players that we were going to get the first year, because you got to have good players to win. There's no doubt about it.
And not long after that, you pulled off the.
Yeah, first year we got 16 wins and kind of laid a nice foundation. And then the second year we had some decent, actually really good players coming back, and we were fortunate enough to put some wins together and sneak out a state championship win over Roosevelt, which was pretty exciting.
And talk about that season a little bit. I mean, you're 28 years old and you win a state championship.
Yeah,
maybe one of the youngest coaches ever to win a state championship.
It's weird thinking back, because when you just go through it that young, it doesn't sink in for what your team's actually accomplishing. But looking back, just the things that we were able to do and the community support that we were able to build at Whitman that kind of followed us through that playoff run. I still have people coming up to me to this day saying that was the greatest live sporting event they'd ever seen. And it's really kind of fun how that night connects so many people in this community that we're still able to talk about it. So it was a real awesome way for me to start my coaching career with it.
Break that game down for us. I know a lot of people who are watching this probably aren't familiar with what happened. Obviously, Roosevelt is one of the heavyweights, have been for the last decade in this area, but talk about that game against Roosevelt.
Yeah, we went into that game, we knew that of the 4 teams there, it was us, and we played Old Mill in the state semis, and we knew that was going to be a tough game. To be honest, our expectation was, all right, if we can knock off Old Mill, we've pretty much maxed out our team's potential, because we saw Southwestern and Roosevelt play in the semifinal before us, and it was just a different pace, different level athletes. They had Darnell Dodson, who played at Kentucky. They had Jordan Morris, who I think ended up at St. Bonaventure. And they were just enormous. But our guys just stuck with it. They stayed disciplined, and luckily for us, Roosevelt didn't have the greatest shooting night that night, and we were able to, hit just enough points. We only scored 39 points, but we only needed 38, so it was a great night that we certainly won't forget.
How would you compare that game to Wise Quince Orchard from this past year?
And people out there who watch this might think I'm crazy, but I was one of the few people that didn't rule Quince Orchard out. I actually talked to Coach Griff, who was an assistant coach at Quince Orchard, after they beat Richard Montgomery in the regional final. And I said, look, a lot of people are probably telling you have no chance, but if you just stick to your game plan and you play your game, and they had guys like Firestein and Matt Kelly who just didn't turn the ball over and didn't make mistakes, and they made shots. And when you have guards that don't turn it over and make shots, your team always has a chance. And Coach Foringer just got his guys to believe that they could do it. And the way they played versus Wise and Perry Hall really made Montgomery County proud and showed that we do have some good basketball in this county.
What similarities would you say there were in your championship win against Roosevelt in that game?
I think what it was mostly is people look at the personnel just from a distance, and they say, oh, they're completely out-athleted and outsized, and there's just no way they're going to be able to physically keep up. But when you play discipline like both teams did, our team and Quince Orchard, your team has a chance, and then it comes down to, are the guys on the court, are they going to make those couple extra plays to pull those games out? And both teams were able to do that. I think the slow tempo really, really helped. And now that we're kind of moving away from the shot clock, I know Coach Foringer wasn't a big proponent of the shot clock for that reason. But, we're entering in a whole new chapter now, so we'll see if that trend's able to continue.
That leads me into my next thing I want to bring up with you is the shot clock. As most people know, the MPSSAA is moving to a 35-second shot clock next year.
Yep.
Some coaches are for it. Some coaches are adamantly against it. I'm curious where you stand, and I'm curious if you can tell us a little more about the process of how the shot clock got invoked, how long it had been in discussion, and why was it invoked this year?
I think it's been, like you said, it's been in discussion for quite some time. And I know our county, there has been a couple of coaches who are against it. It's been brought up at every end of season coaches meeting. What needed to happen, though, if I'm not mistaken, was we presented it, or counties can present it to the state level. And once the state level approves it, then it goes to kind of the big wigs in the state. The reason why it wasn't being done in the years past is because the National High School Federation does not have a boys shot clock. If Maryland opted to go out on their own with it, they lose representation at the national level as far as the rules go. And I don't think they were willing to do that, but now they just realized that they felt the shot clock was important enough that they weren't as concerned with the representation at the national level. So it was voted on unanimously at the state level, and then I forget exactly who had to make the final call, but it was also done unanimously there also. And I believe we were the only state that had it for girls, but not for boys. So the money wasn't an issue because all the gyms were already set up for it.
How do you think that's going to impact, obviously, teams that are less athletic than more athletic teams like the Quince Orchard Wise are not going to be a fan of it because it limits what they can do and, dictating pace. But how else do you think it's going to impact just the style of play? And
I'm for the shot clock. I know we've benefited from it in some years, and in other years I feel like it's kind of worked against us. I do like the fact that we're moving to a shot clock. The main reason for me is end of quarter and mostly end of game situations. If your team is down 5 or 6 with 4 minutes to go, it's not basketball if you have to think about, okay, we got to start fouling now and putting them on the line, or you got to start trapping and taking your guys out of position and you give up layups because the team can hold the ball. Well, now you can play defense for 35 seconds and you can earn the ball back for a chance to score. And I just think that it's much more basketball than it is just turning it into a free throw contest. I do think it gives more possessions throughout the course of a game, which ultimately probably does benefit the more athletic up-tempo teams and probably the better players. But I think it's a sacrifice that's good because it's more pure basketball.
how are you going to have to coach differently, and how much time do you think you're going to have to get into talking to your guys about how strategy has changed. And
I was going to use this summer. It was actually great. The summer league that we're in, the Maryland Elite Summer League, they're letting us play our summer league with the 35-second shot clock. So we've played 3 games, and we haven't got called for 1 shot clock violation yet. So I'm going to see how it goes throughout the course of our summer and kind of use that as coaching tools for our guys in the winter to see, okay, these are some things that we noticed in the summer, these are some things we need to work on. So it's kind of a work in process right now.
Your role as, I'm not exactly sure how to say this, but you do a lot for Montgomery County basketball. I know every year you kind of head up the coaches and picking all-stars. I don't know exactly what your role is or if you have a defined role, but just talk about what you do for Montgomery County basketball and just like as a whole.
I've got a couple of official positions and kind of a lot of unofficial positions. My official position is I'm the county sport director, so if anybody has a problem or a question, instead of having 25 emails contact Duke Beatty or Jeff Sullivan, they kind of go through me, let me know what the concern is, and I kind of relay the message to the higher ups. And I'm also, the thing I spend the most time doing is I'm the boys 4A West tournament director. So I update after every individual day of the regular season. I email all the coaches the updated standings, the updated playoff seedings, the updated division standings, so all the coaches and their players can stay current with where their team stands, what they need to do. I make sure that each game in the playoffs have officials and the locations are secure, and I coordinate with the ADs. As far as the All-Star games go, I oftentimes step up with that role because I feel like it's important because it's a great experience for the kids and it's another chance for college coaches to come see our kids play. And that's ultimately what we want. We want to give our kids in the county a chance to show what they can do, and we want them playing at the next level. I think it's great for our county and it's great for the programs in our county to get that college exposure. And
how did you get all these roles? Is this something by default that was kind of given to you, or
the official roles? They asked me. I guess a couple guys had stepped down in about 06 or 07, so they just asked if I had any interest in doing it. So I was happy to step in and do it, and I really like doing it. I like being organized and making sure things are being done the right way. It's a lot of extra effort and extra work, but it's a lot of little things that just make the experience better for the coaches, for the players, and as far as the All-Star festivities and things like that go, and picking all league teams and all those things, it's just effort and work on the coaches, and I just like stepping up and just make sure those things don't fall through the cracks because we want our kids to be represented the best they possibly can.
I want to switch topics a little bit and talk to you about Whitman. People from the outside think of Whitman as a school for rich white kids. Basketball and Whitman aren't synonymous unless you're familiar with the basketball program. You just wouldn't think by the demographics that they have a good team. I'm curious how you've had so much success and just what's that attributed to?
First off, I absolutely love teaching and coaching in the Whitman community. It's a super supportive community. The parents get involved and they really make a big difference in our program. We have great kids at Whitman. They work hard, they're smart, and the one thing I like about the kids at Whitman that we have is if you kind of sell them on a vision that you have, hey guys, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, these are the advantages, these are some things we have to work on, they really do a good job of buying in. So I understand the way that some people view the prototypical Whitman student. We don't view that as a hindrance to us. We just say, look, these are the types of kids that we get. What things can we do? We have to be disciplined. We have to work together on defense. We have to take smart shots. We have to not turn the ball over. And you try to preach those things and preach how to be a good teammate, how to trust your teammates, how to be a leader. And the guys have done a really good job kind of buying into what it is we try to teach them, and it's worked out well. Now, there's some years that we struggle and we have a tough time with it, and there's some games we can't get our guys to understand taking good shots, and a lot of times those are the games that we struggle in. So we try to sell them. We're lucky we had success early because that's kind of given us some clout with the kids to say, hey, if we listen and we do these things, we do have a chance to be successful, and I think that's been big.
A big part of high school basketball is recruiting. Private schools have a huge leg up because they have the ability to recruit. A lot of kids in your area in your school's jurisdiction are wealthy and they can afford tuition at some upper echelon private schools. How does that play a role, the fact that kids are getting poached from your area that should be Whitman students?
Yeah, it is tough. We've dealt with that the last 3 or 4 years. We've lost 3 to 4 kids that we were kind of hoping would be kind of staples of our program. 2 of them would be juniors this year, 1 would be a sophomore, 1 would be a senior. So if you plug those 4 into our program, we're even at a different level. But with the Landon, Bullis, Georgetown Prep, St. John's, Gonzaga, DeMatha, all these schools in a really close proximity to Whitman, it is something that we have to battle. We only have 1 middle school, Pyle, that comes to us. So I know a lot of the schools in the down county consortiums or the Northeast consortiums, they've got a bunch of different schools they can pull from. We don't have that luxury, so our goal is we just want to try to make sure that all the kids that are supposed to come to us do come to us. And for the most part, that has happened, but there has been some situations where we've lost a couple.
Recruiting is illegal for public schools, but I'm curious how you approach the following situation. A kid who lives in the Whitman area, who's supposed to come to Whitman, is being recruited by a private school. That kid is deciding between the private school or Whitman. They want to talk to you about their options. How do you handle a situation like that?
Yeah, as long as the kid lives in the Whitman district, we can sit and talk to them about anything they want about Whitman. So what I'll do is, for example, for some of the kids that we've gotten to stay and some of the kids we've got that we've lost, I don't beg kids to come play for us, but what I tell them is like, listen, we've developed a pretty competitive program where we kind of view each other as a big family. We take interest in what our kids do. We make sure they go off to college. Their parents are real supportive. We just try to sell them on all the things they could get at Whitman. The big thing is you get a great education at Whitman, and you get to play for a program in which you grew up kind of watching and your friends are playing. That's our big selling point. We can't compete with the facilities of a Georgetown Prep or things like that. So the big thing we go into is we kind of sell the family environment and playing with all the friends you've had growing up and playing in the school where you were raised and where you should be going. I think the AAU circuit is great for exposure, and I feel like if you're playing on a pretty high-level AAU team, you get seen by a lot of coaches out there. And I know a lot of students who are making the decisions on public or private school are really worried about how much are you going to be seen if you go to a public school as opposed to a private school. And I think I'm speaking for most of the public school coaches, it's pretty good basketball in Maryland public schools. And if you're a good player and you come to a public school and you make a name for yourself, coaches will know who you are and coaches will find you, especially if you're on the AAU circuit as well. So please don't use that as your primary reason for selecting a private school over a public school. We look out for you and we make sure that coaches are in the gym and they know who you are.
Tell us a little bit about Chris Lun outside of basketball.
I just turned 40, big year for me and my twin brother Kevin, who lives in Manhattan. I teach at Pyle Middle School, which is about a quarter of a mile away from Whitman. So I teach 6th, 7th, and 8th grade math, and I'm able to do some TV classes also, which has been kind of fun for me. But I get to see the kids starting in 6th grade. I run a 4-week basketball camp for 2nd through 9th grade boys and girls at Whitman every summer. That we have a lot of our kids in our program have come to camp. So our senior class that just graduated this year, all 10 of them were in our program for 4 years, and all 10 came to my youth camp. So we really have a nice program line of kids coming through. I really don't leave a super exciting life outside of Whitman basketball. I kind of joke with my guys about it. I'm kind of a loser for Whitman basketball. It's what my main focus is, but I'm a huge local sports fan. I'm an Orioles, not really a Nats guy, but Orioles, Redskins, Wizards, Caps, and my biggest passion for sports is Penn State football. I graduated from Penn State, and my wife Monica, she has been great for me because she was never into sports. But for all you coaches out there who also married, I think you understand the importance of having a supportive wife who understands how important this is to us, even though it is just high school basketball. You can make it as important as you want, and she's let me have full freedom with that. So I'm definitely thankful for that, but my life isn't really too exciting. I'm just really committed to what we do here, and I'm okay with that.
I want to ask you about teaching at Pyle. You have an opportunity to meet and interact and get to know on a pretty intimate level almost all of the kids that are coming to Whitman. How can you use that to your advantage, the fact that you know their personalities and they know your personalities, so when they come in the door, it's not, it's not a strange relationship?
Yeah, I think the good thing about that is I also get to know their parents. And when you meet a student in the classroom and through summer camp, and you take care of them and you're good to them and you treat them well, I think the parents trust you. And I think a lot of times when students are making decisions between where they want to go to school, it's hard, because if you're deciding on some place where you really don't know anybody or you're unsure of what lies ahead, at Whitman they kind of have that familiar face that they can trust in the classroom or they've known on the court or off the court. So I do like getting to know parents and students at an earlier age. It just kind of helps with the overall family feel that we try to get for our program.
I want to ask you about some of your fondest memories, not only as the Whitman coach, but as a big Montgomery County basketball advocate. I'm just curious what basketball memories stick out in your mind since your tenure at Whitman started.
My greatest basketball memory obviously was in '06 when we were able to, I still remember the exact view that I had. We were up one with 5.6 seconds, and we missed a free throw. And Roosevelt got the rebound, and they kicked it to Dodson, who was a Division I player, and he went down and threw up a runner at the buzzer that I still remember the exact view that I had from across the court. It just looked like it was gonna go in. And when that ball caromed off at the buzzer and we won, it was just unbelievable feeling that every coach strives for. So that's my top memory as far as coaching Whitman. But each team, the exciting thing is each team gives you different memories. Like a couple years ago, we beat BCC at the buzzer in the playoffs when Max Oppenheim had that huge tip in and our student section stormed the court. Max stuck with it and just put it in. It was just, it's a great feeling. We know the type of team BCC is. As Shaq, I'm sure, told you, we have great respect for their team and their program, so it's just a big win for us. So each team kind of provides you with different memories that just make it fun, and it keeps your competitive juices flowing. When you don't look forward to games and you don't get excited about leading the guys onto the court, it's that's when it's time for you to kind of give it up. But I love the feeling that our guys give me when we go into games every season.
What about Maryland basketball or Montgomery County basketball as a whole? I know the Wise Quincy Orchard game was great, one for the record books this year, but any other games over the past decade that stuck with you? There's
none that have necessarily stuck with me. Before I started coaching, actually the year I coached JV, I for some random reason I went to a holiday tournament game that Magruder was playing at DeMatha. And that was a team where Magruder had Ryan Jungins and Brandon Giles, and they beat DeMatha pretty good. And I remember thinking, man, that's a pretty good win for Montgomery County. So then ever since that point, when Montgomery County teams get to that state level, I just have fun watching them play and watching them compete against other schools. So the Quincy Orchard run this year, knowing Paul Foringer for how long I've known him, and I've seen Matt Kelly and Firestein and those guys play all through I-270. So you see those kids playing 5th, 6th, 7th grade, and then you kind of see them on that big stage. It's fun to watch. Deontay Twyman from Sherwood, he was another one I remember when they won this state championship. They beat Magruder in '07. He was one of the better players I've coached against. The Springbrook Dynasty from 3 years, I think it was '08, '09, and '10, with Olasaware and Garner and those teams, Jeremy Williams and Deshaun Walker. Those were fun, memorable teams for me to watch.
Best player you've ever coached against?
Best player I've coached against, that's tough. For me, one of them for sure was Jamal Olasaware from Springbrook. He was just He ended up playing at LIU. He was just a man amongst boys. He was strong. Him and CJ Garner from Springbrook were right up there. One of my first years in the county, we played against a guard named Carl Buck from BCC, who was just lightning fast and just made great decisions. He was just a matchup nightmare. And I know there's some other ones, but those are the ones that really stick out right away. If I had to sit and think about it, I could come up with some more, but right off the top of my head, those jump to the top of the list.
I'm going to put you on the spot again here.
Yeah.
Let's hear the all-Whitman team from your coaching tenure.
The all-Whitman team from my coaching tenure. I have to go with Mike Gruner in the backcourt. If I didn't stick Antoine White, his point guard, his junior year from 05-06 on there, Antoine would definitely get after me a little bit. I just think numbers-wise, you got to look at Shaq DeBodie-Loeb for what he put up with us, and he led us to the Xfinity Center. I would say Mikey Fitzpatrick was also in that backcourt from 06, was a great player for us. And then if I had to come up with a fifth, there's so many other guys that we could kind of put at that spot. I'll have to get back to you on that one. I can give you four, and then a lot of guys on the bubble, whether it's guys like recent guys like Alex Sanson, or you've got guys like Charlie Wall from 2010 was a great player from us. Andrew Castagnetti was a great Whitman player. We've had some good guards in Max Steinhorn and Kyle DePolar, and it's been tough.
I want to ask you about, you had a situation this year where a player who played in a private school elite team was cut from the team and ended up coming to play for you and being one of the better players in the county, if not your best player. Kind of the whole losing players to recruitment kind of came full circle when you got a guy back who you hadn't anticipated would put a Whitman uniform on. Talk to me about that situation and how elated you were to find out he got cut.
Yeah, it was great. He came to us the day before the season started. We're lucky he lived in the Whitman neighborhood. He went to a private school for middle school. He went to a private school for high school, so we really didn't know much about him at all. So he came to us, and he's just, credit to our seniors. When you have a junior coming in to a spot where we have 10 seniors who were kind of real comfortable with their role, our seniors did a real good job welcoming him in. And one thing that we've noticed is, we had a person who wasn't playing much at the private school he was at, but he came to a public school and he was kind of thrown right into a lineup, and he averaged about 15 points a game for us this year. A lot of coaches are in touch with him this summer, looking at him to play for their programs after his senior year coming up this year. So it's really worked out well. He's fit in real well with our Whitman community. His parents have been ecstatic with the vibe that we have and the family atmosphere that we have. So it really has been a big positive for all people involved.
I want to ask you about kind of the coaching hierarchy here at Whitman. Assistant coach turnover rate is pretty high generally. I can't speak for your program, but I know having assistants that you trust, that know their roles, that don't try to do too much is obviously paramount. And I'm just curious how you kind of run your program from top assistant coach to bottom assistant coach to JV coaches.
Yeah, the big thing with me is I put a lot of stock into my JV coach. So I've been fortunate enough the past couple years. I've had BJ DeBuchanan. This is his fourth year with me, and I had Antoine White the 2 years before him. And you've really got to get somebody who A, that you trust is the main thing, and then B, who is going to put the time in and make it feel like it's something that's really, really important to the kids. So that's the main thing I look for with my JV coaches. You got to get somebody who's good and somebody that you trust, who puts time in. As far as the varsity assistant coaches, that's where it becomes tough. You hope the JV coach will stick around and help out for varsity games, and that's a requirement that we have. We want them to be involved with varsity. But for varsity, unlike football, we don't get paid stipend coaches for public high school. So really, when you get a varsity coach, you're asking them to volunteer their time, which is a big commitment, because you want someone who can come to practice, come to games, and kind of have a voice with the guys. My philosophy on assistants is I don't like just having them come sit and watch. I like to get them involved so the kids feel comfortable with them and the kids view them as somebody that they'll listen to and not just somebody extra who's standing around. So I'm kind of picky and choosy with who I let sit on our sideline. We have had some turnover the last couple of years because some people have moved on to coach college, which has been awesome. I know Antoine White is now a assistant coach for Mount St. Mary's Girls, which is great. And we've had some other guys go on to coach other places. So it's kind of a fine line that you kind of juggle with, is you want to get someone you trust, but you understand that it is a big commitment you're asking for because there is no money involved, which is tough.
How do you delegate responsibilities to these guys? One thing I've been told before is it's important that each coach has a different thing they're responsible for, so everyone's not trying to do the same thing. Talk about how you delegate responsibility.
My big thing, I don't necessarily delegate any individual thing. I just say when I call guys in on the sideline, if you have 3 or 4 guys trying to say stuff, I just say, let me talk first, and then if you have something to say, I'll let you go. Because I don't want 5 coaches telling my players the same thing. Eventually the player's like, all right, I get it, I've already heard this. So in practices, I'll blow the whistle, I'll say something, and then I'll say, Coach, you got anything to add? And it's real kind of, I want them to be vocal and energetic and feel like they're a part of our program. So I don't assign roles. I may say, okay, this game, Coach D, can you please, I want you to just watch our rotations and watch our body language and just make sure I'm not missing something. Or so-and-so, keep track of, all right, this is what we're running. Are we getting anything out of this? Is it working? Is it not? So I assign different things as far as that goes, but that kind of changes on a game-to-game basis.
Coach Lun, I'd like you to give some advice to maybe some kids out here watching that aspire to be a head coach when their playing careers are over, kids that don't know what they want to do in their future but love the game of basketball. What kind of advice would you give to kids like that?
I think the main thing is coaching and teaching is an awesome profession. If it's something that you want to get into, I highly recommend it. But there are a lot of things involved with high school coaching that you may not realize, with parent interaction and dealing with other teachers, other administrators, outside influences that kids deal with, social media, things like that. You have a chance to make a big difference. But if it is something that you want to do, my main advice is, it's not something that, if you think it's easy, it really isn't. There's a lot that goes into it, and you've got to put time in and really make sure that it's something that you want to do, because you have the power to make a huge difference, and you don't want to take that role lightly.
Last question I have for you, and I'm very curious to see your answer, because you're the first Montgomery County coach that I've done in this series.
Okay.
If there was a pickup
I'm nervous.
game, there was a pickup game today with all the coaches in the DMV, who would your first pick be?
Whew. All the coaches in the DMV, who would be my first choice? I can eliminate Paul Forenger right off the bat, right? I mean, because he wouldn't be it. But I do love his toughness. I would have Paul Forenger coach our team, is who I would pick. My first pick to play.
Or your first few picks. Who are the first
few picks? I would pick. Oh man, I'm trying to think through the county coaches first, and then trying to think down. I would think Damon Pegram from Blair's got to be up there. He played back in the day. Dondrell Whitmore from Sherwood. I'm from Blake now. Used to coach, played back in the day. I'm thinking of all these good players. So that's a tough one. That is a tough one. I'll have to think about that.
Coach, the last thing I want to do, and we appreciate you sitting down with us today, giving us a look inside your life, really appreciate it. But I want to give you an opportunity, if there's anything that you think is important to talk about, I want to give you a platform. I know you don't get a chance to talk to the masses often, so if there's anything you think is important, please speak your mind.
Yeah, one thing I'd like people to know is that I'm really proud of our county's basketball, Montgomery County's basketball. I'm real proud of how hard our kids work. I'm proud of how hard the coaches work. And a lot of times Montgomery County basketball may be overlooked at the state level. I'm not sure how we're perceived as far as other coaches or other schools around the state. But I'm certainly very proud of the programs that we've built and what we have going in our county. And speaking to other coaches, just remember, we're all competitive, but it's always the kids first. And I know we've talked a lot about sportsmanship and things like that, and just remember, as the head coach, you have the most influence in the gym of how your crowd acts toward officials and calls on the court. So if they see you keeping a level head and keeping calm, that goes a long way in just the overall atmosphere in the gym that night. And I think that's really, really important because we want to set a good example. We want the kids to have a great experience. And what we want to say to Capitol Hoops and to Marc Stern is I always tell you this privately whenever you come to any Whitman games, but it's pretty cool that this is just, with social media, this is just another outlet and another way that all the accomplishments of the kids in the various counties, ways they can be seen. And Capitol Hoops and Maryland Sports Access and different channels of how you guys cover our Maryland public sports. I think it's awesome, and it's elevated. Trust me when I tell you that our kids and our coaches know who Capitol Hoops is, and when they see the Capitol Hoops posted highlights, they jump on and watch, and they know it's a big game whenever Capitol Hoops shows up. So we got to keep continuing supporting Capitol Hoops and different projects like that, because it really does take the programs and our athletics to a different level. So we appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Chris Lun. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.